Okay.
Nikki, over to you to introduce our first speaker of our afternoon session of day 2 of the second annual Women in Politics and Policy seminar.
Thank you, Eric. Well, my name is Nikki Asmo. I am part of the Pathways program of Public Administrative um, major for BPA and MPA, and I have the honor of moderating our session on congressional spouses perspective and on shifting gender roles. And I'm very excited to introduce our panel, our speaker, Mr. Charles, who prefers Charlie Capito Jr., who recently retired as a managing director of the Wells Fargo Advisor Complex in West Virginia. While at Wells Fargo, Mr. Capito was responsible for managing 7 offices and deploying the firm's broader strategy across the statewide complex. This included pertinent management of the firm's resources, building local partnerships, and recruiting talent while creating an inclusive environment where teamwork and innovation produces strong business results. As a graduate of Hampden-Sydney College, Mr. Capito launched his career as the financial consultant with Smith Burney, excuse me, in 1976, he steadily rose through the ranks to become a business and community leader in West Virginia, recognized for his financial and business expertise. He is highly credentialed as a financial executive, financial advisor, and has overseen the management of billions of dollars in assets throughout his career. He's currently served as a member on the West Virginia University Board of Governors, a trustee for CAMC Health Systems, Inc., and a board member for the Charleston Area Medical Center. Recently, Mr. Capito was elected president of the Congressional Club Museum and Foundation in Washington, D.C. He has previously served as a trustee for University of Charleston, Hampton, Sydney College, and Capito lives with his wife, one of our junior senators, Shelley Capito. Together, they have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Um, just a common of wealth, just full of wealth, and we're just ready to jump in. We're so excited to have you. We'd like to start with a little Q&A and get your feedback, please.
Please, I mean, however you all want to do it, I'm happy to help any way I can. So
Awesome.
if you want to start with the Q&A, that's fine with me. So
awesome. So in recent years and since the most recent election, we've been hearing from the first women in a variety of roles, most notable vice president. What is your reaction to being recognized as the first male president of the Congressional Club?
Well, I've thought about that because your leader was kind of included that in a bit of a profile. It's really interesting. I thought to myself as I read that inquiry, it'd be interesting to ask the other members what they think of having a first male leader of their organization. To me, I've been lucky to be involved in any number of, business, professional, social and philanthropic organizations, and they've always, been a mixed venue and, and a variety of folks. And I've worked with, chairmen of both genders and been chairman. And so I really didn't think about it. I mean, it's very clear from our history that, if you look at the history of the Congressional Club, it began as an organization for the wives of the members of Congress, and and over the years we've added different, cabinet folks and their spouses of the Senate. I'm also, by virtue of my wife's most recent role, as a senator, there they have a spouse organization too. It's interesting. They used to be actually known as the wives of the Senate. And, they, in the early years, they were, very active with the Red Cross and those type of things. So it's all changed. In the last few years, we've really started picking up male members. If you look at the 2018 election cycle, there were a lot of female members elected to the House of Representatives. And I think, therefore, our, male, the ability to have more male members in the Congressional Club, Museum, and Foundation certainly increased. I think we're up into the 30s. I mean, that's not a huge number. But if you look at the numbers, and I'm sure you have, in terms of the diversity in the United States House and the United States Senate, it continues to grow. But over the years, I'd say the club has transitioned not only from in its gender, but also probably in its mission. I mean, if you look at families, the way families have evolved as well. I mean, I don't have the statistics on it, but residency, I don't think as many families probably live in the district as they probably once did. It's certainly much easier to commute back and forth. So I don't think our clubhouse, which is over on 2001 New Hampshire, probably gets the same utilization that it did, back in the early part of the 20th century when it became our headquarters. But we still use it for lots of gatherings and events. But so lots of things have really changed, in terms of how the club functions. But lots of things have changed. Look at us today, staring at each other on a computer because we can't sit in a classroom. So you got to be flexible.
Awesome. And to continue, we want to get your take on what experience and challenges that you face as a male spouse of an elected official are the same ones of female spouses, and how does your experience differ from what you understand women's to be?
Well, a couple of different comments on that. I guess to talk a little bit about my role as a spouse, Nikki, I have to reflect on my role as my wife's husband and life's partner. So, I'm her number one fan. So I can't think of a problem or a challenge or an issue with being my wife's spouse. Now, she might have a different answer to that. But Shelley came from a political family. I think that's probably, worth saying. So she was always sort of geared that way. Her father was a member of Congress in the 50s and the 60s. And then he returned to West Virginia and he was a 3-term governor. So she, so she had it in her blood. But, as all of us, she was making her own way. And after college, we were married and came to Charleston, West Virginia and set up housekeeping. And she was a career counselor at a local university until we had our first child. And then Shelley was a stay-at-home mother for 16 years. And, all of a sudden, the kids were getting a little bit older, a little bit settled, high school, middle school, things were perking along. And she was sort of eager to think about re-entering the workforce in some capacity, but still, lots to do in a household. And our legislature, Charleston is the capital of West Virginia. Therefore, our legislature meets in Charleston, and it's a part-time role, 2 months a year, plus, monthly meetings and things like that. But anyway, long story short, she threw her hat in the ring to run for a local legislative seat, and was fortunate enough to win. She ran a second time, and that was in 1996. And then she ran a second term in 98 to 2000. Now, if you all are studying politics and in general, you'll perhaps agree with me that timing is everything. And there was some moving around in West Virginia. There was going to be an open congressional seat. And I suspect also in your studies, you've learned that open seats aren't real common. And in West Virginia, they really aren't common. So, I will keep this scrupulously bipartisan, but to tell the story, West Virginia in 1996 was a very, very one-sided party. And somebody from Shelley's party had not served in the United States Congress in over 20 years and had not been reelected in that role for longer than that, even back to when her father was first elected. So it was a real uphill struggle. She was contesting for the nomination of her party in the initial poll. She won that without any problem, but her initial poll in the general election, she was down 34 points, which is, I mean, I spent my life in the financial services world. I'm not a genius, but I know that's a lot. She just kind of plowed away. And the next thing you know, she just kept working as a family. And it's a contact sport, but it's a family sport. And we just worked at it and worked. I say we, she did all the work. And on, election night at about 3 a.m., she was ahead with 40-some% of the vote. Now, again, I'll throw off on my own favorite home state of West Virginia. At 3 o'clock, the voting machines went down in the Eastern Panhandle, which is very near you folks that are in Washington. That's just, over in Harpers Ferry, Charlestown, in that area. Well, if you know anything about West Virginia political history, you know that broken voting machines in West Virginia probably aren't a good sign. And they certainly don't favor the minority party. So anyway, just as sort of an anecdotal story, it all worked out and Shelley ended up winning. And again, it was under 50%, but she won. And then in her first re-elect, she was the #1 target to be defeated by the opposing party. So, we had her first few terms were very, very active. So we were a busy family. But everybody pulled the oar the same way and we all loved it. And like I said, it was kind of, her father was a bigger than life leader in the family. And that's a long answer to your question. There really haven't been challenges. We all adapt to our spouses and our families, occupations and what they do. And, we've done that. So as you might get from the tone of my voice that, I am a big advocate for my wife and what she does. And we're partners in every way. I will say from the 2000 election where she won with less than 50% of the vote, last November, she's added to that a little bit and she runs statewide now as a United States Senator. And I will brag a little bit. She exceeded 70%. So, she's been moving the needle in the right direction. So I guess I could say as spouse, I should take a lot of credit for that, but that would be a gross untruth. But anyway, so that's a little bit about our journey. What's happened in the interim is the kids are all gone. We became empty nesters pretty quickly. I kept my professional job in Charleston. And as I mentioned, as geographically, we're very, very lucky because she can commute. And when she was in the House, she'd come home after the last vote, which is generally a Thursday. And she would go back to Washington on a Monday or Tuesday. So she could get back and forth pretty easily. And, you think about that in this world we all live in that, I had my daughter at home for a year or 2 or 3, maybe, while Shelley was commuting. But, you think about all of our families, it's not unusual that some member of the household's on the road, 1 or 2 nights, 3 nights a week. So that wasn't really unusual. I think maybe the gender thing 20 some years ago was maybe a little unusual in our area, but it wasn't. We all adapted and life was pretty good. I will tell you one funny story that, speaking of women in politics, and I did mention Shelley's father, who served 6 terms in the United States Congress. So one of the little things that come along, once you've been a member of Congress, you have floor privileges for the rest of your life. So you can show up and wander out onto the floor, at certain times with being credentialed as a former member. So obviously, as a proud father, he was there in 2001 when Shelley was going to be sworn in. And it's a long, long morning. And, in the course of the day, she leaned over to her dad and asked, she said, "Dad, do you remember where the ladies' room is?" And he looked at her and he said, "Sis, when I was up here, the ladies' room, you had to go knock on the men's door." So life has changed, and there's that may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but life has changed, and the women's lounge is the Lindy Boggs room, and it all is equal, but things have definitely changed, and I'm sure you all have studied this, and then I'll be quiet for next question. But one of my favorite fun facts of the United States Congress is the first woman member of the United States Congress was Jeanette Rankin. I don't know if y'all have read that. She was a member elected in the state of Montana, and she was elected and sworn in several years before the 19th Amendment was even ratified. So she served as a member of the Congress before women could vote. So I've always found that to be sort of an interesting, fun fact of not just politics, but certainly women in politics. So that's a way long answer. I apologize. I'll be quiet.
No problem. We're very, very happy to get your take and your perspective. I mean, that's the whole underlying topic here. So we feel free to just go ahead and provide us with as much information as possible, because we're at your attention. I have a bonus question to throw at you. So when we applied for Women's in Politics for this cohort or conference, we were prompted to select an article to kind of elaborate on and provide our perspective in regards to, women issues or women in politics or in things that impact us. With that being said, I came across an article that was very intriguing to me and fascinating. And the article was entitled, "An Opinion Writer Argued Jill Biden Should Drop the Doctor Title." So, and few were swayed. Even the title itself to me was cringeworthy. With that being said, and that can be dissected in so many dynamics, would you think, or would this ever be asked as if from a male, if the roles were reversed? Like, would they ask for you to drop your title or your accolades? How much pressure would it pose? Or do you feel that it's not asked because she from a male, only from a woman, because of a misogynistic issue that we're still dealing with and approach, and for gender inequality? What is your take, please?
I didn't see that article. I have heard discussions, perhaps they were just reactions to articles or comments on that. I certainly, I don't know how much I'll wade into that. I certainly don't have an issue with that at all. And I don't know, I'm not sure I was aware there was a request. I mean, I know people have had opinions on it. But I certainly do not. I mean, I feel like, I'll make the comment you mentioned in my introduction that, now it's 20 some years I've been involved in the healthcare business locally, and I look at the doctors and physicians and people that do the work, and you earn a title. A title is a title, and you earn it. And there's several doctors in the House of Representatives in the United States Senate, and sometimes I can think of a couple in particular when I see them. I call them doctors. They're senators, but I call them doctors. It's a hard-earned title, and I suspect if people have a choice of what they want to be called, I don't. I certainly wouldn't weigh in and have an issue with that. So, and I, your question about whether it would be asked of someone else, I honestly do not know.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, we only have you for a little bit more, so we're going to open the floor up for questions. Let me see. Any questions out there?
Looks like Chloe has her hand up, Nikki.
I don't see it, but we have Chloe. Chloe, please go ahead.
Hey, Chloe.
Hi, Mr. Capito. I sincerely hope I'm saying that correctly.
You said it great. It really gets, if my wife had just stayed with her maiden name, which is Moore, life would have been a whole lot simpler, but she ends up being Capito, and then she ends up being Moore hyphenated Capito. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I moved you up in the alphabet.
Well, I'm sure that leads to shorter graduation ceremonies for your children. You get to see them walk sooner. I'm currently a senior studying international relations at FIU. I'm a Hamilton Scholar this semester in the midst of a congressional internship. And when I came across the article in the Wall Street Journal highlighting your leadership of the Congressional Club, it was just so like, I don't know, it really got me to look at this idea of like pursuing a career on the Hill or in government from a whole different lens in regards to gender roles and this idea of an impact that it can have on the entire family structure. But I'm curious to know, do you view, or is it correct to view the Congressional Club possibly as like this beacon for bipartisan sportsmanship? Like I understand there's like there's philanthropy endeavors and different events, but I do think it's probably a powerful way to get to cross those lines and to instill a sense of unity, on the Hill.
Chloe, that's really an insightful question, and I appreciate it, number one, and I couldn't agree with it more. And I think Beth would agree with me. I don't know if I used this term in the Wall Street Journal interview, Chloe, but I'm fond of saying that the Congressional Club is scrupulously bipartisan, and we work hard at that. And if there is or would become a role where we could be a catalyst for more of that to happen, I think you'd have a lot of members want to do that. Now, having said that, at the risk of maybe displaying my own ignorance, which is not hard to do, when I first got involved in the club, even early on in the board member, I saw my fellow members, and again, I lived in West Virginia, so I commuted a lot, so I didn't see these people all the time. I developed, like we all do, sort of in your dormitory or your classes, you get your friends. But I couldn't have identified what spouse was, necessarily, I knew who they were a spouse of, but I didn't know right off the top of my head what party they may or may not have been, or what state they may have represented. I mean, 435 is a lot of people. But you do start to develop individual friendships. So I think our bipartisan structure is very real. I think we take a lot of pride in having that and work hard to protect it. We had our board structure is set up so that it stays that way by design. Our presidency alternates every 2 years. We have a 2-year term. I will be followed by a member of the other party, and I was preceded by a member of the other party. And we have more vice presidents than, Washington has cabs. I never quite figured out that structure, but anyway, the vice presidents kind of jump one another based on the political stuff. So I sort of got, I ended up, be honest with you, I ended up being president sooner than I thought I was, but it's because you got to rotate Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. So yes, I mean, that was a good take. If I could digress just a little bit, because I couldn't be more excited. You're excited about being on the Hill. One benefit of being exposed to that, and also being an old guy, is that, this is my 20-something year, and I spend a fair amount of time in Shelley's office and in DC. And the young people that come and work on the Hill, and I'm talking about, if you're coming in as an intern from college, or a summer intern from high school, or you're coming in as a staff assistant at the lowest, whatever, the energy and the intellect and the excitement and the enthusiasm that these young people emote is, again, I'm an old guy, but it's so encouraging and so exciting and optimistic, because the people, they're so passionate about what they do in such a good way, and they get along, and they do a lot together. And again, looking at the future of our nation, and you see these people that are so engaged, that Shelley encourages anybody that's interested is to try to get an internship, and just figure out who to ask. It doesn't have to be your representative, doesn't have to be your senator, just get engaged if you're interested, because I'm telling you, it's a great slice of life, and it'll give you a great perspective on the young people of this nation. I mean, they're just great young people all over that Hill. One thing I would say, it's a funny story, I think, is, you know, because you never know when you're going to end up, and I'm running late on time, I apologize, but we had a volunteer come into our 2002 election, and his first reception wasn't that good. And you kind of hear about those things in a small committee. I mean, they weren't, I mean, obviously you want to volunteer, but he didn't feel like, anyway, long story short, we heard about it and we called and we said, this young man is eager. He wants to be involved. Put him to work, find something for him to do. We've got plenty of things that need done. Well, somebody had ordered 2,500 ink pens logoed with the campaign logo on it. Well, they had made a mistake and there was something on there that should not have been on there. But you know, you mind your dimes and nickels. You don't want to throw away 2,500 pens. So our new little volunteer came in and he took a razor blade and scraped off the few letters that got on the pens that shouldn't have been on the pens. He came back by lunch the next day and said, what else can I do? So this young man today in 2021 is, not counting my wife's chief of staff, I don't want to embarrass him, but he is now an attorney, graduated in the top 10 of his class, went into private practice, came back to my wife and is the top legal person on her staff in 2021. So you never know, by getting involved scraping pens, this guy is Shelley's top legal person on her entire staff. So, you know, he got the bug and we got the bug for him.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. We wish we can have you longer. You're very knowledgeable and we're just so happy that to have the opportunity to speak with you and for you to give your perspective. And I like the fact that I wish more people have your attitude, and I hope to see that as far as spouses in the gender roles and for equality, to be inclusive, that you're your wife's biggest fan. That
Well,
is amazing.
yeah. Well, I would just say that I think, you know, being married to a strong woman, the other thing I would say is, and my daughter, my youngest, she's spoiled, but that's okay. She's a strong woman, and I love being surrounded by strong women. So I hope, I'm all about that. So
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Nikki, for moderating. Great job leading the session, Nikki, and great question, Chloe. Appreciate our students. I do want to close by thanking Beth Harvey from the Congressional Club, not only for her invitation in the chat that I'm sure my DC-based team and I will take advantage of soon to visit the club, but for helping organize this session. Thank you, Beth. And on behalf of the governmental relations team at FIU, which FIU and DC is a part of, I want to make sure Beth and Charlie, you both know if you can count on us to help get any congressional spouses from our state involved in your organization. If they're not already, we have great relationships with all of our South Florida members, including the spouses of Senator Rubio, Congressman Diaz-Balart, and newly elected Congressman Carlos Jimenez, who formerly served as our county's mayor, and the nonprofit organization Florida House on Capitol Hill, which is right behind the Supreme Court, is a great partner of ours. They do a lot of congressional and state elected official spouse engagement, and anything we could do to help you all in this scrupulously bipartisan effort, you know, please count on us in the future as well to return the favor. Thank you both so much.
You bet. It's been my pleasure. I hope that was helpful.
Absolutely.
All right. I don't know much about Zoom, but I know to hit the leave button, right?
Basically, thank you.
All right. Cheers.
All right.